Transition, the process of change from one condition to another.
We are now at a new crossroad where change is evident once again.
What does not serve us must transform us anew.
Returning to our original state of oneness and true nature of that which created who we truly are.
Confusion was the way of the past. Enlightenment is the way of the now and future, shedding away the layers of deceit.
We now bring you the transformation of the two who started as one. Our fearless planet never stands still.
Earth has been in a process of transition, and we are not exempt from this remarkable ongoing reality.
Welcome to Transition Radio.
Well, hello, and welcome to Real Talk with the Cummings.
Right. Thanks for joining us.
November 6th. Thank God it's over.
Oh my gosh, the commercials at the gym were just getting.
Oh, you know, they all promise you the stars and the moon and don't vote for such and such because they're doing this. Vote for me because I'm going to give you that.
Can you believe that this candidate did this too?
I know. It's like
they're talking about all the bad things that people are doing, all the negative things. They don't like share what they're going to do to change the world.
Of course not, because they ain't gonna do diddly squat because it's all based on money, lobbyists, and that's, you know, people think that because you put person A versus person B, that there's gonna be this tremendous change. And people, if you look in history, are we any better off today than we were yesterday? What happens is a game of chess or a game of tennis, actually, you know. This candidate does this, so then this other candidate is going to like undo what they did because it's all a game, and nothing ever gets solved.
Nothing really ever gets solved because this is our own personal opinion. Don't get all flustered by what we're going to say, but these political systems are controlled by not their party, but by elites who put in whoever they wanted to. I just read something that our friend, one of our friends on Facebook wrote about what happened during the last presidential election when Bernie Sanders was by and large the most like the one that was touted to win the Democratic, you know, nomination for president. And, you know, the powers that be didn't want Bernie.
Of course not.
So they were able to control the Democratic National Committee, and the party put in Hillary. Yeah. You know, and you know, I mean,
it's
history.
all,
you know,
I mean, last time I voted was in 2004 when John Kerry is his name, whose wife was the owner of Heinz. Yeah. And I'm thinking to myself, I didn't think at the time, but it's like Democrat and they're like multi-billionaires, and you know, they don't realize that they're all connected.
They're all friends at the golf course.
They are. They're all relatives, and they all have the same genetic reptilian blood or whatever.
And I know you guys think, oh, reptilian, that's crazy talk. Not as crazy as you might.
Oh gosh, people don't even know the half of it. But you know, it doesn't matter. It's part of the corrupt system. There's nothing real. There's nothing good about it. It's all about this. That's all they care about. And we're just pawns. They pit us against each other. And I made a rant video about that today, so you can check that out later because we're not going to talk the whole show about this stupid political crap that I can't
even
stand.
got unfriended by a person who, well, actually, they're the one that gave us cats.
Cats, yeah.
They didn't like us. They didn't like us when we came up with the cats.
But at least they didn't unfriend us on Facebook. With this whole political thing. People
wear
wear their politics and religion on their sleeves.
And all we did was express that we don't believe in the political system and that we didn't get the I voted sticker.
Oh my God.
Because we didn't vote today.
Right. And you know, and I find that to be very childish. You know, when you were a kid in school and you did something good and the teacher gave you a little sticker. It's like, Oh,
job.
good job. You did great today. You know, and then other kids that didn't do great were like,
Yeah.
I ain't got a sticker.
Candy.
Oh my God, I want a sticker because, you know. And it's like, come on, people, grow up. A voting stick. I voted. But where's your sticker? You didn't vote?
Yeah.
Why? You know, and it's like,
You're not wearing green.
yeah.
It's like St. Patrick's Day.
Oh my God, you know, people are so immature that it's crazy. It just drives me
It's
insane.
sad.
You know, it's like dead asleep. Materialistic zombies, you know, that live their life based on how they look, what they wear, what they own, you know, who they vote for. I mean, these are all things that really ain't gonna do you a world of good in the long run.
No.
You know?
In the scope of eternity,
Yeah.
it really means a hill of beans, you know, because this
Hill of
is all, you know, one thing that I've been learning about is how frequencies affect what we can see and what we can't see.
Yes.
You know, like a dog, a cat can hear frequencies, you know, vision-wise, cats are way more advanced than we are.
Of course.
You know, animals actually will, like, if there's like a tsunami that's coming or earthquake, you know, they're going to react
Way
to
first.
protect themselves before, you know.
They have an instinct that we have too, but it's been dumbed down.
Right.
You know, and now more so because we're so attached to our phones, our computers. You know, it's like our pineal gland is being calcified more and more each day by the use of the modern technologies, you know? And what we need to do is wake up this pineal gland, wake up our inner light, understand that we're just spirits having a human experience. And this thing right here is going to get you in loads of trouble.
Yeah, because basically this is what dictates a lot of people. You know, their existence on this planet is based on how this looks and how they can give this more comforts and this more money and this, you know, it's like this is what's being served.
Yeah.
And the spirit is totally being ignored. And I'm not talking about getting into your Bible, giving your life to Jesus Christ or anything, becoming saved or repeating the sinner's prayer. I'm talking about waking up from being like ignorant of the truth and understanding that there's a lot more to life than we've been told. You know?
And you're not here just to collect trinkets, get a degree, be a slave. I mean, because that's what the Lord, the owner of this world, wants you to do. But you are here to grow spiritually, almost like a video game. You know, video games you guys love to play, going to the next level, the next level, the next
Donkey
level,
Kong?
Something like that. All sorts of different video games. Well, you're here to go to the next level, not to collect stuff. Because where you're going, you can't take all those materialistic things with you. The stuff that you do to yourself, that ain't gonna help you any.
No.
You're here to grow your consciousness, your spirit, to evolve. You know, and it's hard, I know, for some people to understand that because a lot of people are atheists, a lot of people don't believe in anything unless they can feel it and touch it. But even scientists are starting to see that there is other realms, that this world is an illusion. It's just based on frequency, you know, and how the vibration.
And so what I was going to say was that, like, with what we can see and what we can't see, you know, there are certain things that I remember, like when I was a camera operator, you could see certain things with a camera lens that you can't see with your eyes. So it's like, what are we really seeing? You know, it's like our brain is telling us, and it can fool us into seeing things that aren't there. And you know, I mean, it's crazy. It's crazy because when you realize that you're in some projected, you know, like
matrix.
Yeah, this projected like virtual reality. You know how virtual reality is becoming like the thing with kids playing these games where they actually get emotionally involved because they're actually like there, like in Avatar, you know. And I hear that the military has already developed some kind of like like, like cyber, like robot soldier that, that one guy that we were listening to the other day, he was talking about it, how they can control this robot, the consciousness and stuff.
And the monkey,
and
the monkey is dead, but
Crazy.
they put the consciousness of the monkey in the computer, and the monkey's eating, and he thinks it's alive.
Yeah.
I mean, there are things that you're not taught, because when you go to school, they only teach you the basic dumb things to keep you dumbed down, pushing buttons like a monkey in the 9-to-5 job, poor lighting, and everything you do is just so you could consume, so you could argue with one another. But once you remove that veil, and start to really see things for what they really are, you'll never be the same.
No.
You'll never be the same. You can never go back to living that same old life that you led, just buying things and just, being a slave. And people think, what do you mean? I'm not a slave. I don't have any shackles on. You think you don't have the shackles on. You know what your shackles is? The car that you bought, the house that you bought, they're making you work to pay for these things. Those are your shackles. All the materialistic things that you buy, that own your iPhone and this and that, that's your shackle. And you're so dumb that you don't even know it.
Well, you're ignorant. I mean, I wouldn't call people dumb.
Some
people get offended.
Well, ignorant or whatever, but it's really dumbing down, of people's ability to realize you're defending a system that's enslaving you, that doesn't care about you.
Well, we're a degraded version of humanity.
Yeah.
People think about, the Mayans, the Sumerians, all those different cultures, the Egyptians.
Yeah.
They're so they were so they didn't have the technology. They didn't have all this awareness and stuff. And it's people, they had way more awareness. They were so much
more sophisticated,
advanced.
Than we are. That's why I call it dumb. It's like to not realize that you are being had as a human being. I mean, you get up early in the morning, you go in your car, deal with traffic, go to work for 8 hours, spend a couple hours in traffic, you barely have any time to spend with your family, and all for what? So you can buy these things that you can barely afford, things that are going to break down, things that aren't even significant.
I mean, the whole concept of a 30-year mortgage, think about it. It's
a 30-year sentence.
30-year mortgage.
Yeah, it's a sentence.
Some people, they end up paying, at the end, well, most people don't even pay the mortgage off.
No.
Because they take a second on the house,
mm-hmm.
and then they're paying interest.
Yeah. And then taxes.
It's like this
vicious
snowball effect that happens.
You're a hamster on a wheel and you don't even know it, which is pretty sad. I don't know. I had my awakening back in 2008, and I've never been the same since. And trust me, I've tried to go back to the Matrix several times because it's lonely sometimes. You feel like, damn, am I the only one that thinks this way? But thankfully, so many people are awake now. I mean, watching all these people that we watch on YouTube, and it gives me confirmation. It makes me feel good that, hey, I'm not alone here. I'm not stupid. I'm not, what I've been feeling all along is right on target.
It must be nice, huh?
Yeah, it is. It is because, for years it's been like, I'm just weird, aren't I? And it was like, no, I'm not weird. I'm right on target, and, I'm very grateful for being on target because it's like, I know, I'm not perfect by all means, but I know that where my path is heading and how I feel inside my heart, I am following the great I am. I am following the Christ consciousness. And I know I have a lot to learn still and a lot to grow, but I know I'm on the right track. Totally on the right track. Anyway, we got a few good articles to talk about today.
We're going to talk about that continuance of the book, The Dragon Mother by Michael Tsarian.
Yes, as promised, and this time the 3 male types.
Yeah, we talked about the 3 female types.
Right.
And now we're going to be able to complete it.
Yes. So you want to start?
The 3 types of males. The masculinized male is basically a balanced type with decent parents. His self-image was not warped and contaminated by his mother during the first days and weeks after birth. When he acts in the world, he does so as a sincere, forthright moral agent, and his sense of what is right and wrong is not determined solely by his superego, the impositions and prerogatives of parents and society. Rather, they emanate from a deeper source, from his imperial self and conscience. He finds himself attracted to decent women, but soon learns that he is matched best by masculinized women.
Interesting. Feminized types are attracted to him, but he finds them too pliable, docile, and insincere. He learns that their enthralling mystique merely serves to conceal their shallow personalities. He also realizes that he must be on guard against chivalric types who attempt to one-up him. He learns to beware of this type, although he rarely suspects what underlies their character traits. He does not realize that the power they wield is not their own, and that they are merely agents of a more sinister force which possesses them. Nevertheless, he can on some level smell the foulness below the hyper-masculinized facade, and because of this, he strives to go his own way and not become an ally of chivalric males. On the downside, this type might be so extrovert and self-reliant that he may forego peace, quiet, and aloneness.
Aware of his capacities, he may work to excess and drive himself too hard. His connection with his feminine side or unconscious may therefore be relatively weak. He may have little interest in psychological and philosophical matters and be suspicious of males who have such interests. He can be impatient, driven, and goal-oriented. Failure is not regarded as an essential phenomenon on the road toward success. Rather, it is condemned. And if all goes well, and if all does not go well, this type is likely to severely blame himself. His world tends to be seen in black and white, and as a result, he leaves himself open to manipulation by those more cunning and farsighted than himself. The more he finds himself outmaneuvered by such types, the more withdrawn, apathetic, and resentful he becomes. The world is now chock full of adult men in this state.
Interesting. Their godly mother or goodly mother never got around to teaching them how to be dishonest, showy, and superficial. The masculinized male and his counterpart, the masculinized woman, do not know they are outnumbered by immoral and amoral types. They are not aware that they are in combat with 4 deviant types who breed more of their own kind, thereby making the world a perfect hunt for psychopaths hell-bent on satiating their every perverse desire. Crucially, the masculinized male is the architect of culture. He builds sanely and decently because being sane and sincere himself, his rapport with nature and study of nature ways is rational, sensitive, and non-exploitive.
He does not think of nature as a dead thing, there for his exclusive entertainment and abuse. Nature is not merely a resource to be plundered. Indeed, in early times, the masculinized male closely observed nature. He did not excessively fear it, as we've been told by disingenuous, urbanized, quote-unquote experts. On the contrary, he revered nature as his maker. His first words mimic the call of birds and animals. The fire he invented and lit came from nature's womb. It had to be first latent in nature in order to become part of human culture.
So it goes for every original cultural element. Nature provided it, and man made use of it, bending it into shape according to his needs. If nature did not hold the implacable template, culture could never have arisen. Masculinized man remains conscious of this and does not create structures or paradigms that ignores or contradicts their vitality important fact. In short, the industrious masculinized male efforts created and established each culture that thrived up to the present. His demise means the end of civilization.
The perverse and destructive elements that bring ruin to his culture are the products of his nemesis, the feminized male and female. The feminized male is a type at least influenced by the authentic masculine polarity. It is the influence of the terrible mother that dominates his personality. He is the mystic humanitarian type with liberal attitudes.
He does not despise the female principle because he actually embodies it, albeit in a neurotic or malignant mode. He seeks the underlying reality of things and shows an interest in religious and spiritual matters. He defies the female and becomes a devout acolyte of some exotic tradition. He is the seeker and reformer with a cause. He is philanthropist and communitarian against individualism and for collectiveness or collectivism, and advocates of the brotherhood of man.
He disapproves of aristocracy and takes exception with exceptionalism. He tends to be a bleeding heart and acts as if he, and those like him, are humanity's mothers or caregivers. He feels relatively comfortable in the company of feminized females, masculinized females, and chivalric males, but is utterly repulsed by masculinized males. He identifies less with the chivalric male, even though this malignant type is merely his more exaggerated and armored alter ego.
The chivalric male is a feminized male who has learned to cover his true identity with psychosomatic armoring. The feminized male is usually not as physically armored as his counterpart, but can be mentally just as resistant and narrow. Although he can be productive in his own way, his preferred outlook is critical and negative. He poses as a critic of which is built by masculinized men and women and cynically attempts to undermine their ideas in creation. As a son, he is not generally loved and cared for by his terrible mother.
This is because she'd prefer much more for him to be a chivalric type. Because of this deficit, the feminized male does what he can to impress and win his mother's affection. His commitment to various quote-unquote hippie causes stems from this subconscious need. Like the chivalric male, he idealizes the feminine and the female, which in turn makes him a willing ally of most females.
Even masculinized females want to turn to him at times, using him as a shoulder to cry on or a convenient eunuch like today. All in this one of the least loved and admirable types. Consequently, he's not only deeply wounded, but might in certain cases substitute love for power. In these cases, he works in a behind-the-scenes capacity for his chivalric counterparts, giving needed advice and approval to these more energetic types he secretly loathes.
He never comes to realize that his nature has been determined by the terrible mother he blindly serves in one way or another. As an emasculated male, he finds the attainment of success and greatness elusive, even though other quote-unquote castrated males and feminized women may look up to him and shower him with rewards for his apparently selfless service to their causes.
On occasion, the feminized male poses as a chivalric male. This is done if and when he comes into contact with these types. It is relatively easy for him to blend in with them and disguise his natural docility and passivity. The feminized male might seek a mate who is masculinized in order to find the structure and strength he lacks. He does not mind being controlled because he has experienced that throughout his childhood.
And for the most part, he approves of this kind of relationship, what would his life be without it? So when he leaves the bosom of his mother and her protecting presence, he seeks a surrogate mother to structure his days and guide his projects. However, despite his intentions, he might be driven toward a feminized female for company, since it is unlikely that an adjusted masculinized female will be permanently attracted to him.
He might even fall prey to a maladjusted, terrible female, the same types as his mother. Since he is basically an quote-unquote oral type, he will not be overly bothered by this. If he marries a feminine type, chances are his children will be as feminized as their parents. If he ends up with a terrible female, his children will probably develop into one of the 4 malignant types unless some other positive influence enters to prevent this from happening.
If he develops conspicuously neurotic traits, they tend to be of the masochistic variety. For this reason, he often finds respite by way of marijuana, opium, LSD, ayahuasca, or some other psychotropic substance that affords him an out-of-body experience, sense of bonding with what he takes to be the Great Mother, or sense of oblivion.
He never realizes that he is either attempting to find a simulacra of a serenity experience in utero or to exercise and massage repressed memory of his troubled and traumatic time in the womb. In one sense, the feminized male is the most castrated type. When ancient priests and goddesses acolytes physically castrated themselves, they did so not to prevent entering to the mother goddess, but to hand over their masculinity to her.
She became the keeper of their member, which henceforth is always in her. So it is figuratively or symbolically with the feminized male. When he feels as if he is taken up into the cosmos or feels as if he is one with the universe, he announces his subconscious desire to return to the serenity of the womb. Since this is impossible physically, the womb situation is projected elsewhere, onto the crowd, world, or cosmos. It is projected into a heavenly abode where one becomes an angel.
We see why it is that so many feminized types become clergymen and priests. We also see why so many of their leitmotifs and accoutrements, hairstyles, attire, chalice, wafers, beads, mantras, architectures, and so on, are directly traceable to goddess traditions. If a feminized male turns to philosophical speculation, he is likely to adopt a Schopenhauer perspective on existence.
Big word.
Yep.
He is likely to be mystical, Gnostic, fatalistic, resigned, and dour, as well as sanctimonious. Although he secretly fears women, he might be inclined to openly denigrate them in order to bolster and emphasize what little masculinity he possesses. In any case, in word and deed, he poses no threat whatsoever to any woman, most of whom are far more assertive and confident than he. He can also interject the womb. As we see later, the so-called unconscious serves as perfect metaphor for the mother's all-embracing womb.
More concretely, the feminized male is victimized by his mother and her presentation of males. His perception of his father and of the male world is that which has been customized and handed down by his terrible mother. It is therefore an inaccurate and deformed image that underlies his distaste of the male gender and world, and which he orients himself towards malignant femininity.
Even when his mother stands accused of mental, physical, or sexual abuse toward him, she excuses herself by indicting her husband or some other male for their grievous ways against her or against women in general. A terrible mother is likely to make her child falsely believe that her strictness and cruelty are at the behest of the child's father. Thus, she plants the seeds of male hatred early on.
So the Nash Awesome had, that is, I don't know what the little face is, and your
This
wife
is awesome, he says, I guess, right?
Yeah, Nash Awesome. Your wife is beautiful. Thank you, Nash. I think so myself. From this point on, abused child is sure to regard his father, not his mother, as his chief violator. He consequently comes to despise male strength, which he falsely thinks is the source of all evil in the world. In any case, under no circumstance will a terrible female or mother or feminized male or female acknowledge and address female crime. They know nothing about the female psyche and do not care to know anything about it. For these types, there is only one malefactor in the world, and that is man.
We had a question. It says, Nash Awesome says, is this pro-male or anti-male? I can't tell.
It's not pro or anti anything. We're just, if you haven't been following the show, we've been talking about the archetypes.
Different types of, we talked about the different types of females and the different types of males now. And basically, it all comes down to the mother. And in this case, this book is called The Dragon Mother by Michael Tessarian. And it's talking about how even in utero, when a baby is in the mother's womb, that it is more affected by the mother than the mother would ever realize. That the mother and the baby are one, and they're connected at a soul spirit level.
Right, and also a neurological level, because as you know, the baby is attached to the umbilical cord, and every thought, good or bad or indifferent, is being passed from the mother to the child. And there's connections that are being made from the time the child's in the womb, or it's a fetus. And the book explains the different archetypes of male and female, and we went over, I think it was last week's shows, about the different types of female, and now we're going over the different types of male.
Yeah, there's the masculinized female, there's the feminized female,
Mhm.
and then there's the terrible female.
Right.
So that was like, there's 6 different types, I
Right.
guess, male and female.
Right.
So the chivalric male is an abnormal type who has overly masculinized his consciousness in order to escape the overwhelming and stifling influence of his terrible mother. He is the masculinized male gone wrong. His masculinity is of a malignant rather than a wholesome kind, even though it is born from a semi-legitimate desire to overcome the terrible dragon mother, whose countenance turned malign when he demonstrated too much self-will.
They go, oh, cool, like Carl Jung philosophy, but shaped by the mother. Pretty much,
Yeah.
yes. I'm a big fan of Carl Jung. I studied psychology greatly in my occupational therapy career. And I believe that a lot of our problems do rise from childhood, even from fetal perspective. And I mean, a lot of these archetypes that they're talking about, I believe, fit a lot of people, and especially I think a lot of people in the trans community as well. It's got a lot of,
Yeah, and they talk about a lot about how even the trauma of like the umbilical being cut early,
yeah,
people don't realize that, you know, or the trauma of
birth,
of a little baby coming out into this world.
Yeah, the way it's so
and
synthetic and cold,
yeah,
and
it's like this sterilized, like really cold environment.
Yeah,
you know,
and vaccines right away, and they're whisked away from the mother. I mean, it's just, you know, a lot of things that
like
we don't think of that affect our lives, you know, and what we think of being a male and what we think of being a female and how we react and how our gender identity becomes developed.
Exactly. Trauma of circumcision.
Yes, that too, big time.
Huge.
Let's see. So
as a
result of his contrived persona, he's not overly attracted to masculinized females. On the contrary, he prefers feminized females and does so to cover his underlying loathing of his terrible mother. Thus, his show of hardness and rectitude in a pretense, his masculinity based on his false image of it rather than on reality. He poses as an adjusted, civilized, quote-unquote, male by his disingenuous courtesy towards feminized females around him. He takes their cause and offers the security they solely desire.
As a result, the majority of his relationships are loveless. His enthrallments turn sour all too soon. According to Wilhelm Reich's brilliant and perceptive analysis of abnormal personality types, our chivalric male personifies a highly, quote-unquote, armored type of person. As such, he is the world builder, fashioning a world custom-made not only for types such as himself, but for the comfort of the feminized females he adores.
His preferred environment is open, spacey, square, and well-lit. This is because he subconsciously seeks to escape the memory of the claustrophobic, darkened, quote-unquote, cave wherein his mother's incestuous attentions first undermined his masculinity.
From a Freudian viewpoint, a chivalric male attempts to escape the influence of the terrible mother by overly identifying with his father or some other idealized male. Although such an identification provides temporary psychic relief, it does not get to the heart of the problem or lead to wholeness.
This is partly because the chivalric male cannot know for certain whether the male figure with whom he identifies is not himself an inauthentic type of unable to face himself beneath his own psychosomatic armor.
The psychological fallout for this type can be severe. This is because by the time he falls from grace, he has risen quite high, even if only in his own estimation. When his fortress of self-deception crumbles, when he suspects he's not the virile civilizer he thought himself to be, he is usually incapable of making sense of what has happened. He remains so disoriented, crushed, and apathetic that he inevitably turns to substance abuse for consolation.
To the end of his days, he never learns the truth about himself or the female psyche. This type has been on the go from the dawn of historical time. We lived In worlds made by such men, the adjusted masculinized or truly civilized male is his direct opposite and nemesis. The latter must work to change the world for the better against the chivalric man's wishes, even though temporarily there may be collision between the two types.
The main thing separating them is their relationship to their mothers and to women in general. It is totally different for each of them. The masculinized male is not controlled or controllable by female types, whereas the chivalric male definitely is. It follows that for all his feelings of omnipotence, his creations are weak from the start. To compensate for this, he sees to it that everything he erects is superficially sturdy and rigid, and this goes for physical structures or theoretical ones. He armors his world and finds it good to do so.
He never realizes the world isn't his construct. The world in which we all live is precarious and likely to crash at any time. If there is anything truly stable and hygienic in this world, it was invented and produced not by him, but by his nemesis. The masculinized male or female, for that matter, the chivalric male is likely to choose a feminized female for his perfect mate. His choice, like all men's choices of partner, is based on the nature and intensity of his own inner feminine, or anima, as Jung termed it.
Likewise, the feminized female's choice of a mate is also determined by her inner masculinity, or animus. Consequently, the child of a feminized female and the chivalric male is potentially off to a bad start, and the likelihood of such children growing up to dominate world affairs is heightened if the world system prefers and promotes such types. Indeed, this is the situation in the Western world today.
Definitely, this is something else.
I really like that decor. That plant reminds me of separation of the wheat and tares.
Thank you.
Oh, wow.
Thank you.
Symbolic.
Yes. So the chivalric male masculinity is an artificially contrived version of masculinity. It is an image of masculinity to which he holds all his life. As an anal type, he does not like to let go of what he's made. Structure, familiarity, and regularity are vitally important. Since he was dominated by his terrible mother, he has no idea what constitutes authentic femininity.
Thanks to his deviant upbringing, his conception of femininity is as warped and wrong-headed as his conception of masculinity. This will, of course, be bound to create problems between him and most women, particularly with masculine women. He does not find himself compatible with them or with terrible females who, like his mother, are of an overly controlling disposition.
This is why he is more likely to be attracted to a feminized woman who are not inclined to control him. He wants to be the one in control and does not want any other woman to dominate him. This awakens too many unpleasant memories. Consequently, he is inclined to dictate what his partner does, says, and looks like.
The chivalric male's distorted image of manliness goes hand in hand with his image of God, and he usually believes in God because his malignant masculinity is reinforced by doing so. As I show later, such a belief is part and parcel of his entry into the so-called solar phase of development. During this stage, a chivalric type pose as a heroic, superhuman, civilizer, quote-unquote, of humanity, must appear 100% perfect to himself, and everyone dazzled by his persona. His works and world must be superlit and unstained.
This is best accomplished by establishing and worshiping a bright solar deity on the high who showers the world with meaning and approval. This divine force also serves to cast back the shadows of the underworld, that is, of his own unconscious. He craves a sunlit world and worships his fatherly lord above in order to not be dragged down into the swamp of his own troubled emotions.
His love for his heavenly father is born from his subconscious hatred of his terrible mother. As an exhibitionist, the chivalric male also strives to have people envy his supposed sexual prowess. Indeed, he may be quite the ladies' man. However, his inner wish is not for sex but comfort, gentleness, acknowledgement, and pleasure, all of which he sorely lacked during infancy. He might even become an aggressive, semi-sadistic Lothario in order to disguise his true needs from himself.
His haughty, dismissive attitude towards lovers stems from this self-deception that ironically prevents him receiving what he desires most of a partner. The chivalric male world topples when he confronts the fact that his God's light has not served to permanently banish the devil's influence, and that worse, he has become incapable of feeling.
When he realizes he has become desensitized sexually as well as emotionally, he panics and turns to prescription drugs to mend what he thinks is broken, or to medicate him when all hope fades. In extreme cases, he might even pretend to himself that he has renounced the ways of the flesh to go in search of God. In this way, he emasculates himself in a similar manner as his terrible mother did in earlier times.
Oh, they become transsexual? No. Although he goes on to blind himself with light, he does not succeed in deepening sensitivity. All that happens is that he becomes contemptuous and hateful towards the man he sees who do feel deeply about things. They must be destroyed. And if they have the misfortune to come under the hand of an extremely armed, psychotic, chivalry male, they might find themselves being destroyed.
This is a scenario we see played out time and again in history, one that is not about to come to an end. Even if the chivalric type does not believe in the existence of God, he is likely to opt for the Kantian consolation and say to himself, if there is no God, there should be. We must invent him, since we all need the phantasmagoria of God to stay sane.
Certainly, the Mysteria Honda chivalric male depends on his image of masculinity and God to keep himself and his world together. The chivalric type is basically an Apollyon. His transcendental heavens and super-sensible, eternal platonic forms, like his science and rationality, are merely fiction offering needed stability.
They are the means by which he escapes and sets bulwarks against the Dionysian abyss in which he and his kind must not fall. His beloved paradigms must not be assaulted by dissenters. They are to be exterminated because they seek to topple the towers which elevate us above the female miasma and shield us from cultural obliteration. What has been built high can and should be built higher still. So let's get on with it.
That which has been polished must be repeatedly surveyed for corrosion. That which is straight and level must never become skewed and bent. Under no circumstances must weeds be allowed to grow through the cracks. Must fresh air get into the sealed chambers of dirt and germs get on one's hands?
We must be fast, driven, active, bright, loud, erect, and awake. The chivalric male takes refuge in ideas and ideas about ideas. He chooses this course because it distracts him from feeling and dealing with the feelings that emanate from deeply laid memories of the uterine condition. His rigid, clean, superlit, stable, safe world is one which prevents the return of disturbing memories.
Very interesting stuff.
So the chivalric male basically is protecting himself from dealing with himself.
Right.
He's basically kind of like resigning himself to just pretty much shoving everything under the carpet.
Right. Yeah. And I find there's, all these different types, both male and female types, are very telling to, like, you will know them by their fruit type of thing in people's lives and how they react and how they cope and how they deal with situations, maladaptive coping skills that we as humans take on, whether it's using drugs and alcohol, whether it's buying material things, whether it's changing our gender, whatever it is, it's all based from the moment that we are being created in our mother's womb and how our mothers shape our reality.
I think it's interesting, though, that the popular girl, I would say out of the three, would be the feminized female.
Right. And it's the most, she's the most, what's the word I'm looking for? Facade, fake,
Because she does things in order to provide protection for herself, in order to control others.
Yeah, and pull in the chivalric male.
Right. And to be able to manipulate,
A lot of women do that greatly. I mean, they look for the male gaze and they will do anything and everything to gain that attention so that she can control
But like, they'll look at social status.
Yes, Nash Houston says she's the most superficial.
Yeah,
definitely.
Exactly.
Definitely.
But they'll look for social status, and usually looking for the guy who has the great career.
Right. Because she wants to feel safe,
right. And she wants her life.
Yeah. She doesn't care about the man.
But here's the interesting thing, is that you flip that over to the male side.
Mm-hmm.
And I would say that the popular person would be the masculinized male.
Yeah, the way they were talking about the masculinized male, he's really the most tender, even though he's masculine, he's most, he's better equipped with nature. He respects nature. It's like,
he's the one that's built society.
Yeah.
He's the one that's the inventor, the creator, the one with all the forethought and, all the, done the good things.
That's right. Versus the chivalric and the feminized and, all the other ones that are really hiding or running away from really dealing with their own junk.
And it's really interesting because the book goes even into more detail, and it talks specifically about how, the mother directly affects, like, sometimes we talk about how, it's the father wound.
Right.
And in reality, dads don't have anything to do with their child's development until after maybe 5 years of age.
And that's where all the damage is caused between the time the child is born to around the child is 5 years old, where he gets sent off to school. And then the father really doesn't have, like you said, the influence, because the father's out making money and whatever else. The child spends most of his time with his mother.
And the thing about the terrible mother is that, and we've seen this play out in our own parents and stuff, how they still think that we're connected to them in some way, that we're not ourselves.
No, they
think we are part of their body.
Yeah, they think they own us. Yeah. And I've had that argument with my mother, and how do you think you're on your mother? It's like, and that says what, and it's like they feel this ownership, this, and then when they don't have that control, they literally lose it.
Yeah.
They become irate.
They don't appreciate not being given that place that they feel is rightfully theirs.
Yeah, and then they put in all sorts of guilt, they create a very dysfunctional person.
If sense of ownership.
Yeah, if that person is not willing to do the work, because it takes a lot of work.
It does.
To fix yourself psychologically.
It really does.
And a lot of people aren't willing to do that work. That's why a lot of people are drug addicts, food addicts. They have issues with gender, sexuality, the whole 9 yards. And it's because it's easier to find a coping mechanism than it is to actually deal with your junk. And dealing with your junk takes a lot of hard work. It's something that
it's like you have to literally rip the floor out.
Yeah.
And re-put it in,
Yeah, you can't just put something over. You have to
Band-Aid it.
Yeah, you have to, like when you paint the walls, you have to like literally take all the stuff, the old paint off to go down to the bare walls.
Because if not, what happens?
If you try to paint over that, the paint ain't gonna go on right. It's gonna fall off because you need to. It's like when you paint the outside of the house, you have to pressure clean it. You can't just go out there and put paint over old paint because it's gonna fall off. It's gonna create like a shocky type of material.
Yeah, it's like you can't just if you want a good garden, you can't just
plant over stuff that's been there.
No, because you have to pull all the rocks and the weeds out and make sure that you get the right kind of soil.
Right.
And it takes time and effort. And actually, you have to be very organized and deliberate.
Yeah,
in what you're doing.
And dealing with your junk hurts. Too many people don't want to deal with their pain. But you don't realize that you just can't sweep it under a rug because it's always going to rear its ugly head. And you might end up, becoming addicted to whatever and constantly be searching for the next thing that's going to make you feel better. But in the end, nothing will ever make you feel better till you deal with your issues.
And what happens when you do sweep things under the rug? Like, if you're like, oh, I just dropped, okay, we're not meat eaters, but if I dropped a chicken bone and I just swept it under the rug,
it's going to rot. It's going to rot.
Yeah. It's going to create all kinds of bacteria, nastiness,
pesticides.
Bugs are going to be attracted to it.
Yeah.
So think about what that does to your psyche.
Yeah.
When you, instead of dealing with your junk, you decide that you're just going to bury it under this pile. And eventually, it's going to start stinking really bad.
Yeah.
And it's going to affect other things, you know.
Yeah, it's not pretty. And, you know, most people don't have the patience to really seek help. And not too many psychologists really know what they're doing. You know, they're all about the money. I think the type of help people require is doing a lot of soul searching, being in nature, self-help books, learning about spirituality, not religion, true spirituality that really gets into the nuts and bolts of things in humans. You know, really stripping yourself of all these layers that you've built on yourself from all the hurt and really going in deep and finding out, who are you? What makes you tick? Why are you in pain? Why do you think the way you do? It takes a lot of work, but it's very rewarding when you actually get to the core of the problem.
Because then you find out who you really are, what you really like, what you really don't like, what makes you feel inspired, what, you know, what really, really makes you who you are, you know. And those are the things a lot of people, you know, working these 9-to-5 jobs and stuff and going 8 to, you know, like Monday through Friday, and then the weekends off, and then the kids, and then you know, I mean, it's like this system that they're just a part of, and they're just like a mechanical cog.
And it's done on purpose.
In a material world. You know?
And it's done on purpose because a person that doesn't have time to really, you know, look out and go, God, what's this world I'm living in? You know, they don't have time. And it's created on purpose and doing things that you don't like, you know, jobs that you hate. There's no creativity in what you're doing. You're just like pushing buttons, you know, day in, day out. Digging holes, stocking shelves, doing things that you hate.
Turning us into automatons.
Yeah.
Nash Awesome had something.
I recently lost the ability to cry. I'm a little worried. People are saying it might be bottled up.
It might be bottled up.
Yeah, it might be bottled up. Glad to receive today's message. Nash, so it's been recent. Is there something that has happened that may have opened up Pandora's box to your past, to some event that really caused you a lot of pain that you don't really want to deal with at the moment?
Yeah, because it typically seems to be that it's kind of like you don't want to deal with these things, so you cover them up.
But it must be recent because she's recently lost the ability to cry. So there might be something that you are dealing with at the moment that might be rehashing some past events. My suggestion, I've always tried to tell some of my clients to write their thoughts and their feelings, even your dreams, because sometimes your dreams could be a window to things that
a
are
lot. Friend and animal deaths.
Okay, a lot of friends and animal
Is
deaths.
It, could
so
it be a
fear of death and a fear of abandonment, because, you know, losing someone or something you love, you know, can make you remember things of childhood, maybe, you know, some sort of abandonment that you went through from the last 1.5 years. Just write your feelings down on paper. We have an inner child, and a lot of times we could bring in that inner child through our writing, because it's like that innocence that you could portray through written work. And, you know, find out, why are you so afraid of crying? Because it's fear of probably letting go of those emotions. And by you probing yourself a little bit through this writing, what do you call it, mechanism or writing task, it might help bring some things to mind and be able to mourn, but nothing comes out. Maybe you're afraid that if you mourn, you would feel too much, and the pain is too much for you to bear. Be gentle with yourself. You know, be gentle. When the time comes for you to mourn, it'll just happen. Just forgive yourself forgive them for maybe leaving. You might be angry at them for leaving, angry at your pets for dying. But know that, you know, it's all part of what is. And, you know, sometimes we don't have control of everything. Sometimes we don't have the answers to everything, but that's okay. It's okay to be afraid to feel, but realize that eventually you're going to have to allow those feelings to come out for your own mental and physical health.
I also hear that, you know, people take losing a pet sometimes even worse than losing, you know, a person.
Because they trust their pet. They know their pets are not going to abandon them, hurt them. And when the pet leaves, it becomes like everybody else that has abandoned them and left them. So, yeah, try to, like I said, keep a journal. And sometimes our written words bring certain messages that, you know, because it's like almost like you don't really think when you write. You just allow yourself to mindlessly write, you know, and that might bring on some information that your subconscious might have hidden that could become consciously aware.
You know, we usually don't talk about this with regards to emotional well-being, but being gentle with yourself, like, you know, we talk about with exercise, that, what is it? Just don't yell at your body, but just whisper to it.
Yeah.
And I would say, don't be afraid to confront yourself.
Yeah.
You know, because you won't get any answers by just ignoring it.
Right.
Because suppression leads to like a bottlenecking, and it actually leads to
diseases,
problems, you know, that become even worse.
Yeah.
You know.
Definitely.
Good way of saying that. A lot of insight.
Definitely. Well, the next article, it's called Transmen Show Unusual Connectivity Patterns in Brain Network Involved in Self-Perception. Most brain imaging studies involving transgender people or people with gender dysphoria have focused on whether their brain looks more like what typical for the gender they identify with, rather than the gender they were assigned at birth, based on their biological sex. For example, whether trans men have masculine brains and trans women have more feminine brains.
The results have been mixed, and if anything, point towards trans people having brains with distinct features that are neither stereotypically male or female. A new study in brain imaging and behavior adds to this trend, showing that trans men have unusual patterns of connectivity in brain networks involved in processing of the self as compared with male and female controls.
The present data do not support the hypothesis that sexual differentiation of the brain of individuals with gender dysphoria is in the opposite direction as their sex assigned at birth. The researchers said, adding that the unusual connectivity patterns they found in trans men was detected in comparison with both male and female controls, and there were no difference between the control groups.
The research team, led by Jamie Fusner at University of California, Los Angeles, scanned the brains of 27 trans men, whom they refer to as female-to-male persons with gender dysphoria, recruited from via a gender dysphoria clinic at Karolinska Institute in Sweden, where they'd been diagnosed with gender dysphoria, specifically transsexualism. The trans men had not yet undertaken the surgery and/or hormone treatment that they were seeking. They had no other current psychiatric or neurological diagnosis. There were also 27 male and 27 female cisgender controls.
This was a resting state brain scan, so that participants simply lay in the scanner doing nothing. The researchers then analyzed the participants' pattern of neural activity at rest to look for signs of connectivity in various brain networks, including the default mode network, which is more active when we mind wondering and thinking about the self rather than engage with the outside world, in the silence network, which processes internal bodily sensations, among other things.
18 of the trans participants and some of the controls also completed a body morph test. See example, they looked at images of their own body shown for either half a second or 2 seconds, that were morphed to varying degrees with the body of another man or woman, and they had to say to what degree the photo was of themselves.
The trans men showed weak connectivity in areas of the default mode network as compared with both the male and female controls. As you expect, they were also more likely to rate the body morph photos as being themselves when they were morphed with a man's body, rather than a woman's or unmorphed. However, at longer views time, this identification with a masculinized version of their own body correlated with greater connectivity within pregenual anterior cingulate cortex, part of the default mode network that associated with feelings of self. The controls didn't show this correlation, but at shorter viewing times, but not the trans participant, showed a correlation between seeing their unmorphed body as their own and connectivity within the right insula, a region involved in the rapid processing of internal bodily signals.
The interpretation of these different brain activity patterns is highly speculative, but the researchers said the results are consistent with the idea that in trans men, higher cortical systems were modulating the activity of more reflex systems involved in self and own body processing. The researchers said, quote, gender dysphoria individuals differ from controls with respect to connectivity within networks involved in self-directed thinking and that relate to own body identification, which could represent a neurobiological correlate of their condition, unquote.
Whether these unusual brain activity patterns play a role in causing gender dysphoria or are the consequences of it, or both, is not clear. It also remains to be seen how surgical or hormone treatment might interact with these neuronal patterns. More research, especially longitudinals, that test participants over time is needed to tease out cause and effect. And researchers with trans women is also required to see if the current findings generalize. In other words, I really don't know much. The fact that we're different, and I think a lot of the differences stem from the majority of trans people having Asperger's or having OCD or having neurological impairments that make us very different in the way we feel and think about our bodies and how we look at the world.
Usually, we'd be more likely to be out of the box people.
Yeah. And the thing is, we've taken gender as the be all of things, but I think gender has absolutely nothing to do with it. I think that we're all very unique individuals with neurological impairment that could have been caused by what we spoke regarding the mother's womb interaction, by the chemicals, because we do know that we live in a more chemical society now than we've ever lived, at least for the past 50 years or so. Our mothers exposed to a lot of pesticides, a lot of mothers exposed to hormonal medication to improve their ability to have children, and things of that nature that could create these anomalies or this consequential way of feeling, in people. Anyway, should trans people have children? Here's an article that talks about the obstacles and the reality of it all. And funny enough, before we started the show, we watched a little snippet of a trans guy who, and there's been several, I think there's been maybe like 3 or 4 that have been in the limelight. I personally know 2 of them that were friends of mine. And the question is not, should they have children or not, but what, in the long term, the benefits of it, what is it that's so, and I know that people want to bring children to the world, but when you're as different as trans people are, is that something so good? Not just for the trans person, I'm looking at the child. The child is always, the one that has to deal stigmatized. The child is always the one that,
that's my mom.
Dad, yeah. And, how confused is this child going to be? All because the trans person wants to feel, quote unquote, normal and bring forth an offspring to life. you know.
Do you agree that meat growth hormones are influencing early puberty?
I totally agree. So yes, it's all, not just the meat, there's hormones on everything. There's estrogenic compounds in everything, from materials that you cook in, cups, drinking cups, in the water, all the birth control that is being placed into the water system from people taking birth controls. And
we were like in out at the City of Rock State Park, and we saw this big, huge plume of chemtrail, and people are saying, "Oh, they're not real," and it's like, why would they be doing this at like sundown?
Yeah,
and you'd be
crisscross, you know.
It's like, and then it's like it clouds up.
Yeah, we're living in a very
those I'm sure probably have estrogenic compounds, and they come down to the surface.
I mean, we don't know. It's like everything, you know, is chemically driven and affecting not only our endocrine system, but our neurological system and our thinking abilities, you know, from fluoride in our water, you name it. You know, it's like we're bombarded. We're like insects being bombarded with pesticides and everything.
And yeah, those hormones in the meat are really dangerous.
Yeah,
I mean, not to mention that the meat is already dangerous for you, but you add hormones to it. And why do they have to put antibiotics in meat?
Yeah.
It's because the animals are sick.
Right.
So they have to give them these antibiotics to keep them alive.
Yeah.
Basically.
Yeah, it's pretty sad. Yeah.
So anyway, transgender people often have to choose between their fertility and their transition. Experts recommend that trans people preserve their fertility first if they know they want to be parents, but there are serious barriers in the way. When Cass Daniels began telling his partner, friends, and family that he was thinking about transitioning back in 2015, his mother was supportive of his plans but had a strong and unexpected reaction to the news. She wanted to talk about parenthood.
When I first came out as trans, I wasn't sure if I even wanted to start testosterone, if I wanted to just do a natural transition, he said, now 27 years old. But she was very adamant and had a lot of questions about whether or not I was going to have a biological child.
Assigned female at birth, Daniels, a social worker, had always known that he wanted to be a parent one day. So when he began actively preparing to begin his transition, he knew he wanted to take extra steps to preserve his fertility before beginning any kind of hormone replacement therapy.
He put off the testosterone treatment that would lower his voice, increase muscle mass, and make facial hair thicker, looked up a fertility clinic, and began instead to take estrogen in preparation for an egg retrieval.
It was an interesting thing to go from telling my family and friends, hey, I think I'm trans, to having to give myself shots of estrogen, which was the opposite of what I was looking for, he said. But I knew the end result would be that I would have a baby that was genetically mine.
See, and this is where I have problems where people are stating that they're born in the wrong body, but yet they're using that body to conceive life, you know?
As a female.
As a female. And wanting to change the verbiage of instead of pregnant women to pregnant persons.
You would think that a person that is actually engendering or feels like they were born in the wrong body would want to have nothing to do with childbirth.
Exactly.
Nothing to do with the process, nothing to do with the maternal instinct, that would be completely dead to
the thought of injecting estrogen into your body and having your breasts getting gorged and being, you know, shaped like a woman and all that stuff. You know, I would more think that a person would try to adopt a child. They wanted to be a dad, you know, but it's just, you know, it just kind of doesn't go with the narrative. So, was I reading?
Yeah.
Okay, sorry. Go ahead. Last year, Daniels and his partner, Cummings Daniels, purchased donor sperm, fertilized Daniels' frozen eggs, and then placed an embryo in Cammy. The result, Rishi, a healthy baby girl born last August. There's little information on the number of transgender people in the U.S. who take steps to preserve their fertility before or after transition. A Toronto survey of childless trans people found that although 21% wanted to have a child in the future, only 3% had banked either eggs or sperm. Other studies on trans truth found that the rates of fertility Preservation were also low, less than 5%. We also know that about 1.4 million American adults identify as transgender, and several studies suggest that 1/4 to 1/2 of these adults are also parents.
However, transgender people who transition later in life are more likely to say that they are parents compared to those who transition in early adulthood, indicating a majority of trans parents may have had their children before transitioning, according to a 2014 Williams Institute review of transgender parenting research.
As more people are coming out as transgender or gender nonconforming at earlier ages, interest in fertility preservation for this population is rising. Ching ching, money to be made. Experts say for young people like Cass, who know they want to transition and that they want to have genetically related children in the future, it would be best to take steps to preserve the fertility before beginning hormone treatments for transition.
But there are significant barriers that prevent the trans community from following these guidelines, including poverty, discriminatory definitions about who needs infertility treatments, and a lack of culturally competent healthcare providers around the country.
While infertility treatment is an expensive, out-of-pocket process for most people, the little insurance coverage that exists relies on premises that fundamentally discriminates against the LGBTQ identities. A trans person cannot meet the traditional medical definition of infertility used by insurance companies. For example, because it's defined as a man and a woman having unprotected sex for 6 to 12 months.
Because of this, even if a trans person did have infertility treatment coverage, they wouldn't be able to qualify as infertile to use it, making all treatments out of pocket. Egg freezing can cost as much as $15,000, though sperm banking tends to cost no more than $1,000. Daniels was dismayed to find that he had no health insurance coverage whatsoever for the costs.
I sat on the phone for hours trying to file a claim because all that time the Affordable Care Act had kind of said you had to cover trans-related procedures. He said they were refusing to cover pretty much anything. Thankfully, Daniel's mom, who had initially raised the question about grandchildren, gave him and his partner $12,000 to cover the cost of the egg freezing. She later gave the couple another $8,000 to cover the cost of donor sperm and embryo implantation.
That's a mama who wanted
Grandkids, yep.
I am privileged and I recognize that privilege, Daniel said. I know how hard it is for people to realize that they will not be able to have their own genetic child unless they can afford egg retrieval or decide to carry the baby themselves. Indeed, trans people are more likely to be low income and lacking health insurance coverage compared to the average American, making Daniel's experience well outside the norm.
These financial considerations put fertility preservation out of reach of most people who are initially transitioning, said Dr. Ward Carpenter, director of the Transgender Health Program at Los Angeles LGBT Center.
Complicating things further, there is a massive variability in the quality and accessibility of trans health care in general. The World Professional Association for Transgender Health guidelines say that hormone prescribing physicians have the responsibility to discuss how hormone replacement therapy could cause a reduction in fertility, and that fertility preservation options should be discussed before starting on any medications.
Not only could stop the possibility of
Will.
And will, and what kind of health issues are you placing on the child? Because the child could be born healthy, have all 10 fingers and 10 toes and all that good stuff. But in the long term, what kind of neurological health, what kind of endocrinological health is this child going to have? Because, the parent...
You know what happens to crack babies.
Oh, of course. Or fetal alcohol syndrome babies, and babies that are when we talk about the womb health, the interaction between this trans parent who is identifying as a man, but is carrying a child as a woman.
Yeah, that was the interesting thing. Like when this person who we watched in that interview, they said that they went to the hospital, they had to let the nurses and staff know that a man was coming in. That they needed to address him properly gendered. And it's like, what does that do to the baby? you know, the baby
negating the mother connection
Right.
between a child. I mean, that's why I say it's, you know, it's so selfish of trans people to want to fulfill their fantasy of being this, that, and the other, because in the long run, he's not going to go, I'm your mommy. You know, he's going to want to, you have two daddies. You have two gay daddies because that's the mentality, you know, and it's like, where's my mother?
Well,
Yeah.
I mean, I know I have a friend who has a, you know, from high school, an FTM as their spouse and stuff, and basically, you know, they had 3 kids or something, 3 kids, and they seem to be well adjusted. I don't know, but you know, it would just seem to be odd,
very odd, and
for the
very.
child.
You're again not allowing the child to have the experience that the child would need to have with his mother.
Because it's almost like, you know, they go around as being perceived as being a gay couple, yet they are as heterosexual as you would imagine, right? So
yeah, very
interesting.
Trans health is a small field, and specialists tend to be concentrated in major cities and along the coast. General practitioners may want to help, but may know only the basics about how to start hormone replacement therapy.
There are instances where transgender people who have already begun hormone replacement therapy have gone off these hormones in order to conceive, but there's no guarantee that they will be able to fully recover their fertility.
For instance, taking testosterone will eventually cause a person to stop ovulating and menstruating, while estrogen will lower sperm count and quality. It takes time to recover those bodily functions, if you can recover them at all.
But beyond the biological uncertainties, going off hormones after being on them for so long presents an emotionally fraught step, said Dr. Maurice Garcia, director of the Cedars-Sinai Transgender Surgery and Health Program in Los Angeles. By the time they see a surgeon like Garcia to get gender-affirming surgery, they've likely been on the hormone replacement therapy for years and can't imagine going backward to do a fertility treatment.
Then they shouldn't be having kids. You know, it's like you're going to place your child in jeopardy, you know, in so many ways. People are very loath to want to get off hormones for a minimum of 3 to 6 months in order to let the effects of the hormones wash away so they can bank healthy sperms or eggs, Garcia said. So the best time to do fertility preservation is before they even start hormones.
There's also the uncertainty about what level of care a trans person will get from the fertility clinic itself. Freak, right?
Yeah.
Like freak.
Yeah.
Are the doctors and staff understanding of trans identities and willing to use their preferred pronouns, especially when it comes to medical treatment, about bodily functions that are so strongly intertwined in historical and traditional ideas about gender?
These are things trans people need to like really take a look at and realize you're not going to deal with a soft world, a world that's going to be ever caring for you, ever understanding of your needs. You're pretty much, you know, a prey to the lions out there. And if you can't deal with that, then you got no business doing this, because it's the world we live in. I mean, you can't change the way people look at you. You could only change the way you feel about how people feel about you. You know, that's about it. And if a person is transitioning on their own by buying hormones outside the medical care system, that lowers their chances even further that they will get this kind of education, Garcia says. There are no data on how many people are doing this, but an estimated 97% of all websites selling pharmaceutical drugs are unlawful.
Choosing between mental health and a future family, Daniels considered delaying fertility preservation in order to start on testosterone right away, but ultimately decided that it would be detrimental to his well-being to begin transition, stopped doing egg retrieval, and then resume.
And I think mommy's need for a grandchild, you know, is dictating the move here. I knew mentally I was going to be on the path towards becoming myself, he said about his long-term goals to transition. And then to abruptly stop that and kind of go back to injecting myself with female hormones, that just didn't seem like something that would support my mental health.
When he finally chose a fertility clinic in Denver to do his egg retrieval, His doctors is the Colorado Center for Reproductive Medicine, a North American network of fertility clinics, were supportive and helpful about Daniel's fertility goals.
They were talking about me having my period, and they were still using male pronouns, and they were talking about retrieving my eggs and using male pronouns. Daniel said, it's just, it makes absolutely no sense. Males don't ovulate.
No.
Males don't have periods.
No.
No. It's like they want to change the world to fit them. And that's wrong, because you can't do that. You can't. I mean,
They are, though.
yeah.
On the day of his egg retrieval surgery, he banked 21 eggs and was elated to begin his transitioning process. Still under the effect of the anesthesia, he told anyone who would listen that he was trans.
The nurse that was there was so kind. He said, I felt safe enough to tell the person I was trans, and that doesn't typically happen in medical settings.
Why would the doctor not know that you're trans? Ovulating, female body,
Yeah.
just gave eggs. Oh, by the way, I'm trans. Oh, it's a shock.
Yeah.
I thought you were a man. Even in a fertility clinic, a trans man's need to be vindicated as the gender that they purportedly want to be or present themselves as has to be acknowledged.
No, of course, because it's
even if they're doing things that no guy
would do. Yeah.
No guy would be banking eggs.
No. It's like I said, I question the narratives. I question the validity. I question, because it.
In a few years, Daniels and his partner hope to use sperm from the same donor to help Cammie conceive with her own eggs, making a genetically related half-sibling for Reese.
See, and then this is another, okay, so they are with a genetic female.
Mm-hmm.
The typical thing to do would be for Cammie to have had the baby.
Right.
And go to a sperm bank and...
Yeah, why would this be?
Yeah. It just...
I think we're talking about a dragon mother here who wants grandbabies.
Yeah, it's the mother.
She's paying $14,000.
I want not your girlfriend's baby. I want a baby from you.
Yeah.
And I'll be supportive of your transition as long as you give me a grandchild.
Right. And I'll even pay for it.
Yeah, exactly. Daniel's aware of how lucky he is to have been able to freeze his eggs before transition. When his daughter was born, trans friends asked how was it possible? And we're disheartened to understand that they probably would never be able to afford the same treatment they gave Daniel, his daughter.
He also has other trans friends who manage to go off their hormones and get pregnant. But ultimately, these barriers to trans fertility are unfair and need to change. Daniel said because they force people to choose between their own mental health and a future family.
I know how hard it is for people to realize that they will not be able to have their own genetic child unless they can afford egg retrieval or decide to carry the baby themselves. I frankly believe that if one chooses this life, then you don't have the right, because a child doesn't say, I want to be born, I want to come. No, the child is forcefully brought into this world because of parents and their own selfish needs to feel that role of a parent so they could play along the game of whatever. And then that child has to be placed.
Yeah, we talk about Adian Dowling.
Yeah.
We had a comment on YouTube just on the video you made this morning about how Adian is supposedly like one of the most well-adjusted trans men that he's ever come across.
Yeah.
And I would question that in the fact that Adian wants to vindicate his gender so badly that he has to take on this role
of daddy
as a dad.
Yeah.
It's like,
along with all his other roles, he had to be on Men's Fitness magazine.
Right. It's like everything in order to
justify.
be what He says he
It's
is.
validation of, and I think that validation is what creates most of these trans women that they want to have a uterus and they want to have babies and they want to feel the role of it because that validates.
We were just following a friend of mine that had SRS surgery a couple weeks ago, back into normal, regular life,
Mm-hmm.
and they're somehow shocked that they're getting misgendered. It's not, and then they and I'm wearing a t-shirt to show that I have a vagina.
Oh, and I want them to wear a t-shirt that says,
I have a vagina.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like just because you went and did a cosmetic procedure that makes you believe that you have a vagina is not going to change the way people perceive you. Obviously, they still see you as a man. So what do you do?
What benefit
is it? All these validation tools that trans people use that are ill coping effects, of what they need to have the world see them as, because it's not even about them. It's like, I want this validation.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I find in most trans people's cases is that need for validation. They can't quietly do things. They have to announce it to the world. They have to get everyone's approval.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what makes me question the reality of this thing. Because if somebody, hey, I want to learn how to play golf and I want to be a good golfer. So I'm going to go get lessons and I want to do the things that I don't have to announce to the world, I'm playing golf now. I scored or whatever. It's all part of this validation due to some sort of childhood trauma that makes trans people behave the way they do.
And we're talking about 350 million people in this country.
Yeah.
1.4 million are trans.
Yeah.
So if you do the math,
mm-hmm.
you realize that that's a minuscule amount compared to the total amount of people in this country.
Right.
What I'm trying to say is that these children don't have a choice, and they're being forced to be born to parents who are going to force their way
mm-hmm.
onto them.
Mm-hmm.
And they're going to be forced to have to deal with it
mm-hmm.
for the rest of their lives.
And their friends are going to they probably won't have much friends because once those
The cat's out the
bag and they find out you ain't sleeping over those people's houses,
Mm-mm.
And you might even submit your child to violence, the same violence you're submitting yourself to. But now you're bringing a little being into this world that didn't ask to be born to your conditions.
It's like Adrian Dowling's kid.
Yeah.
It's going to be like, oh, you're Adrian Dowling's kid? Okay.
Yeah, we don't want anybody. And they're not, he's very public. Right. So it's like, now they're putting the baby in the limelight.
Yeah.
Is he for 1 minute thinking that he could be harming that child?
The privacy, even President Obama and other presidents, even President Trump, is not going to put his son out in the spotlight. Like they didn't have Malia and Sasha Malia, being, paraded in front of the cameras and stuff. I mean, when President Obama was president for 8 years.
Of course,
with
protected.
Michelle.
Yeah. But these trans people, it's all about the limelight. Like the one we watched earlier, a comedian. He was you take a show on the road. They've all got to be in the spotlight, dramatize, be in the spotlight. They can't just don't make a big scene about things. No. They have to be in the spotlight. They have to have that validation. They have to be in the front page of every magazine around. They have to, and that just makes me question the validity of this gender thing. Is it attention-seeking problem? Did they drop you on the head when you were a baby? Did mommy not give you enough breast milk? I don't know. There's so many different things. But this gender thing is just,
It's used as a scapegoat.
Yeah, it is. And here, we're seeing it more and more each day. This article, 3 transgender best friends transition together, age 11, after years of bullying. What are the chances that 3 best friends, all 3, transition together? You could throw a dice and not, hit that kind of gambling statistic.
But this is something that's common with pre-adolescent girls.
Mhm.
I mean, they're very cliquish.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they like to gather in packs,
Yeah.
in groups, and they like to do the same things.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so they congregate with people and make friends with people who have similar tastes, similar ways of wearing their hair, similar ways of wearing their makeup, and oh, so and so is going to be in first period. I want to get first period with you, so that we're sitting in class. That whole thing. So you got to really question this whole, rapid onset gender dysphoria, because you have 3 friends that are transitioning from FTM. So 3 transgender friends are supporting each other as they transition from male to female, age 11.
So it's from male to female.
Oh, from male to female. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Lily, Fiona, and Zuri
Yep.
have been diagnosed with gender dysphoria and will soon undergo medical intervention to prevent their bodies from changing from that of boys to men. Wait a minute. So this changes everything.
It's no different than,
because that's more common with girls.
Cross-dressers on a cross-dresser side, they're like, I'm going to transition. Let's all transition. It's this whole thing. People don't want to believe it, but it's just becoming this whole, fad. It's no longer cool to just be gay or just be a drag queen. No, we've got transition, honey. So, Lily, Fiona, did you already read that?
Lily, 11.
Okay. Lily, 11, from Austin area of Texas, has already begun taking hormone blockers, a reversible process that will delay her going through male puberty.
It's not reversible.
It's not. Something her parents wrestled with before undertaking, but will buy their family more time to figure out what is best for Lily.
No, that's not.
I mean, it's like, and all these parents too, they want like, maybe we could be the next Jazz Jenny.
Around the age of 2, Lily started asking, around the age of 2, just like Jazz.
Yes.
Lily started asking for different types of toys. And then after that, first big thing that we noticed was that she wanted to dress as Cinderella for Halloween. Lily's mom, Julie Mayers, said.
Because nothing says more than, you were born in the wrong body because you like to play with dolls and you want to wear dresses. Like, it's not a normal condition for kids to want to wear their sister's dresses or their mommy's shoes. No, that hasn't happened throughout history. But all of a sudden, now you're born in the wrong body. People come out of the woodwork to let you know that you are harming your child by allowing her to be transgender. And it's something that we've just come to expect. It's something that we really just rolls off our back at this point, Julie said.
Sounds like another Munchausen.
Munchausen's mom, yep.
Once you start to read the medical background of what gender dysphoria is, and that it is a medical condition, it is not just a mental state. It is not something that is made up. When an 8-year-old tells you she is in the wrong body, she means it.
Like an 8-year-old knows anything about being in whatever body. I mean, some kids will say they want to be a cat, or they want to be Spider-Man, or they want to be this, that, and the other. Kids' imaginations are crazy. Okay?
It's a good thing.
And it's a good thing, and there are some boys that are very sweet and feminine and prefer to play with dolls. They've been around since the beginning of time. Nobody put them on blockers, and nobody, put them on hormones. They just let them be. They outgrow it. Some become gay men, other become clergymen, whatever, and then life goes on. Right before her 8th birthday, she came out from her room one morning and she said, I'm Lily all the time now. Only use girl pronouns. I'm not going to be Jack anymore.
So just matter of fact.
Yeah, matter of fact. Julie and her family had a lot of negative responses, not only from strangers, but also from their family and friends.
And rightfully so.
Yes.
Stacy Jefferson, 10-year-old Fiona's mom, said she believed she just had a boy who liked girls' toys until one evening when she was putting her son her then son, to bed. The standout moment for me, when I knew I really couldn't spend another day with Fiona not transitioning, was when we were getting ready for bed and she said, "Mama, I need to tell you that I think I was supposed to be born a girl," Stacy said.
I said, "Honey, why do you think that?" And she said, "Well, I have a girl's brain and a girl's heart." Like, wait a minute, is there such a thing as a girl's brain and a girl's heart? I thought they were just brains and hearts, you know? All my toys are girl things and all my friends are girls. I don't really understand the things that boys like to do. And neither do a lot of boys that are born differently. I knew right from the moment that I needed to raise her differently.
Kimberly Jones, whose daughter Zuri is 11, is also entering puberty as a transgender girl, recalls the moment she knew she would allow her to transition. The first time we let her go shopping in a skirt, she was delighted. She was dancing around so happy, but also really nervous about people would think or say. Now it's like she's filled out with this whole persona of who she really is.
While the three kids are well supported by their families, all three have encountered bullying outside of the home, especially from children at school. Lily said, from the first to third grade is when I was bullied a lot. I was really sad going to school sometimes because I knew I would be teased or bullied. And, you know, that's the key, because they were feminine boys. And, you know, that happens. You get teased. I got teased because I was too masculine, you know. And so it's like, well, we've got to change the situation. We can't allow this bullying to take place. So we're just going to change her gender.
To fully transition during their teenage years, the three girls will take hormone blockers, then begin hormone replacement therapy around the age of 14 to 16, then have gender reassignment surgery when they are 18.
And that never gets to be 18, because it's like, it's usually the time span of these doctors is like, oh, it's when you're 14. You know, the youngster describes how profound and effective having friends experiencing the same things as her has had on her young life so far. I'm glad that I have friends that actually understand what I am going through, Fiona said.
We immediately became friends. Like, this person understands what I'm going through. Like, oh my gosh, she is so nice and sweet and kind. I want her to be my friend. Lily added, I realize I'm not the only person who's transgender. There are people out there who are like me.
That's pretty sad. You know, it's like gender roles, gender toys, gender clothing are the denominator for a child to go on a lifetime of drugs and do things with their body that it's going to hurt them in the long term. These kids will probably not live past 30 because of the things that they're doing to themselves. You know, pretty sad. Science shows sex is binary, not a spectrum. Last week, the New York Times ran an op-ed by Ann Fausto Sterling, a professor of biology and gender studies at Brown University, arguing that biological sex is not binary. The piece joined a long succession of media coverage criticizing the Department of Health and Human Service recently leaked memo which proposed legally defining sex as either male or female.
From a scientific perspective, there was nothing wrong with HHS's definition. Biological sex refers to whether we are female or male, based on our anatomy and reproductive functions. The concept of sex is, by definition, binary.
And as we see, these trans guys used their anatomy that they so hate to bring forth a child in this world. Two gay men don't have that privilege.
Right.
You know, they have to adopt or get a surrogate mother. You know? Fausto Sterling's piece points to the extent of intersex people as evidence that that isn't the case. Certainly, research has shown that as many as 1% of the population is intersex, a medical condition denoting that an individual possesses anatomy characteristics of both sexes, such as a combination of vulvar and testicular tissue. Statistically speaking, however, this means that the vast majority of us fall into one category of sex or the other.
It therefore becomes a question of whether a statistically rare occurrence in the general population should be considered typical. An analogy that is commonly used to illustrate this is the fact that most of us have 10 fingers. There exist individuals who possess fewer or more than 10 digits on their hands, but this doesn't call for a reconceptualization of how many fingers a human being has.
Exactly. Fausto Sterling mentions how earlier this month, Hungary Prime Minister Viktor Orban banned gender studies program. He has been called far right by some outlets for stating that the government does not consider it acceptable to talk about socially constructed gender rather than biological sexes. Deputy Prime Minister Zsolt Zengen additionally pointed out that gender studies has no business in universities due to being an ideology, not a science.
Indeed, gender, whether we subjectively feel male or female, is biological, not a social construct. An extremely large and consistent body of scientific research has shown that gender is the result of prenatal hormone exposure, even in the case of intersex individuals, as opposed to adults in society imposing gendered norms on unsuspecting children from the moment they leave the womb.
After describing the process of gender socialization, the piece goes on to say that fetal hormones also affect brain development. How would it be possible for hormones to affect the development of brain in utero, but not the expression of this brain development, which manifests as sex-type difference in interest, personality, and behavior when the child is born?
The piece also references the work of psychologist John Money, which contradicts Fausto Sterling's very thesis. Not only have Money's ideas pertaining to gender identity been widely discredited, but they also demonstrate how gender is biological. Many have surely heard of the unfortunate case of David Reimer, a Canadian man whom Money surgically reassigned as female after Reimer lost his penis in a botched circumcision as a child. Money believed that Reimer could be successfully socialized to live life as a girl.
Upon reaching adolescence, however, Reimer chose to return to living as a male and tragically took his own life at the age of 38. After facing these hardships, Reimer's case speaks to the innateness of gender, that one's sense of being male or female is not learned.
It isn't necessarily necessary to redefine sex in order to facilitate the acceptance of people who are different. Pushing for social change for the sake of the change, as many of those on the left seem want to do, only leads to misguided policies and unnecessary confusion for the public.
Going beyond Fausto Sterling's op-ed, this argument has been extended to include the transgender community, with its proponents contending that transgender people defy male and female categorization and offer proof that sex and gender are a spectrum. But in reality, the term transgender means that a person identifies more as the opposite sex than their birth sex, which still operates within a framework of sex being binary.
For the intersex community, there's long been a history of physicians failing to respect their bodily autonomy or incorrectly assuming that they were not the sex they grew up to identify as in adulthood. In these cases, individuals should be allowed to change the sex marked on their birth certificate if later in life an intersex condition becomes known.
We can and should advocate for the rights of intersex people and those who do not fit typical gender norms, while at the same time acknowledging these scientific truths. Because that's the name of the game. I mean, biology is biology, and you can't use it only when you want to. It's like these trans guys. But yeah, crazy stuff, I tell you.
The world is a crazy place.
It is, and it's only going to get crazier. We were watching something that took place in Israel, right? In Jerusalem. Was it the wall of?
No, the Western Wall.
The Western Wall, and there's some sort of prophecy.
I don't know, babe. I'm not really familiar with that story or the snake or anything.
Well, you're not. Okay. Well, I was hoping you had some insight on it.
I don't have anything.
That you were a little more.
No.
Okay, so never mind. We'll scrap that one because I'm not that familiar with it.
I just visited the Western Wall, and it's just a place where they say the old temple, Solomon's temple, the foundations were, and people put in prayers in there.
Right.
And I guess they discovered a snake on the wall. I don't know.
Yeah.
Something about a dove. I don't know.
Yeah, something like that. But anyway, I thought that you might know a little
idea.
bit more about that than I do. But I guess that's all for today. Thank you, Nash Awesome, for your interaction and for sharing a personal part of you. I hope that you're able to really understand yourself more and what you're going through. Be more than happy to interact with you via email. If you want to discuss it further, you could email me at transitionradioshow@gmail.com, and I'll be happy to, discuss and brainstorm through this with you to see if you could get some resolution. Well, that's about it. Anything else to say?
Not really. We got a nice fire going.
I'm kind of warm. I'm like,
you sweating?
Yeah, I'm sweating. Yeah, it's warm. We got one of these little gas fireplace things, pretty neat looking, but it's pretty warm too.
Kind of toasty.
Yeah, a bit toasty.
So sorry.
It's all right.
You should turn it off next time.
It's okay. I'll turn it off later.
So we're gonna get back to watching some more of our. I don't know. We've been, like watching lots of videos and things about spirituality,
spiritual growth, not to be mistaken with religious dogma. But we, I know my main purpose is to grow my spirit as much as I possibly can, not to continue to get sucked into this material reality that basically in the long term doesn't bring you real happiness. It's only temporal, as many have learned, in life, that you could only get so much material things when you get to the point where even the rich people become crazy after, they have it all.
What happened to Howard Hughes? Locking himself up in
Yeah, they have it all. So it's like, they just, there's no joy anymore. And it's because there's no joy in material things. Desire creates unhappiness. So you learn to go within and really learn who you are.
And it's one of the most simplest things you can do is just step outside your front door and go walk anywhere there's nature, where nature might exist in a particular place where you live, a park, a little trail or something.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever you can do to disconnect from the artificiality of what we have going on.
And exercise. Your body needs exercise. Eat the right kind of foods that will help your cells regenerate, bring more life into your lifeless body. Because a majority of people have a lifeless body. Your posture is bad, your bones are bad, your muscles are atrophying, you're taking chemicals that are destroying the essence of you and not even knowing it. So try to be good to yourself.
It's the only body you get, so try to take care of it. And it'll take care of you.
And your spirit, because, these are meat suits. And we need them to be able to integrate into the next realm and to be able to feel and all that stuff. But your spirit health is very important, not the utmost important thing.
All right.
All right. So in saying that, folks, we're going to call it a night. Thank you all for tuning in. Catch you next week. And we love you. But remember to always love yourselves too. That's very important. Self-love, unconditional love. It's the way to go.